Aisha radiyallahu anha said about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, وَكَانَ يَخْلُو بِغَارِ حِرَى فَيَتَحَنَّثُ فِيهِ. She said, radiyallahu anha, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to seclude himself at the cave of Hira, فَيَتَحَنَّثُ فِيهِ. And he used to, فَيَتَحَنَّث. There are two interpretations for this term, يَتَحَنَّث. One is that فَيَتَحَنَّثُ, meaning that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would swerve from the pagan practices of shirk and polytheism and lean towards monotheism as the Hanif, the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam would do. The second, فَيَتَحَنَّث, means that he would distance himself from society due to their ill practices and immoralities. Whatever the interpretation, we can deduce from this that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted a change in his society. And so Ghar Hira, the cave of Hira, became the meeting place, the greatest meeting ever to happen on the face of this earth. The leader of the angels, Jibreel, descends to meet the leader of mankind, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ana sayyidu walad Adam wala fakhra," that I am the leader of the children of Adam, without boasting, no pride, no boasting to that, because Allah subhanahu appointed him as the leader of mankind. And in this meeting between Jibreel and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the very first verses of the Quran were revealed. اقرأ بسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق. The first 5 verses of Surah Al-Alaq, where Allah subhanahu said to read in the name of your Lord who has created man from a clinging clot. And so these verses, as we will talk about today, bi'idhnillah, are verses that answered the longing of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to see change in a society. These are verses that tell us to change. And what is it telling us to change? It is telling us to change things on a macro level. It is telling us to change things on a micro level, as we will see. All of us have been brought into existence in a certain environment, the life of this world. We did not choose this earth. We did not choose the dynamics on this earth, but we are here, born and brought into this earth and its life. But Allah subhanahu talks about this worldly life. He says, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهٌ وَلَلدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. This life that Allah subhanahu has built for us to live in, He describes it in a certain way. He says that the worldly life is nothing but play and amusement. Play and amusement. Allah subhanahu put us in this situation, put us in this environment. So the very first thing that we have to change is to change the default environment we found ourselves. And if we look at the world, we see that on a macro level, it's about amusement and play. On a micro level, it's about amusement and play. And the problem with amusement and play is that it lacks structure, it lacks purpose, and it's very distracting. Let's take some examples on a micro level. On a micro level, if we look at play and amusement, for example, video games can be distracting and dangerous. Yes, there are healthy levels for play and sports and amusement. There are healthy levels, but there are also dangerous levels. We can see the power of play and amusement, how it can distract us. We know how FIFA distracted the world. There are healthy levels, but there are also dangerous levels. These are the micro levels. But if you look at the macro level, Allah subhanahu is saying that this whole life of this world is la'ib, it's lahu, it's an amusement, It's play. The whole world itself is about that. It lacks structure. It lacks purpose. This is the environment we find ourselves in. And so in this environment of amusement and play, we find there's competition for wealth. Who has the bigger house? Who has the better car? Keeping up with the Jonases. We're caught up and distracted with this competition. Alhaakum at-takathur. This gathering and accumulation distracts you. As Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu said, min al-amwali wal-awlad. The distraction of gathering as much as wealth as possible, to have as many children as possible. This distraction is dangerous for our souls. So Allah subhanahu put us into this environment, and the first order of business for us is to change it. How? Allah subhanahu gives us the guidance. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq khalaqal insana min alaq. Allah subhanahu gives us the notice, brings our attention to our creation. Allah subhanahu created us from a clinging clot, brings our attention to the origin of our creation. And when we think about our creation, we naturally come up with some questions. Why were we created? Why are we in this earth? Why are we placed in this worldly life filled with amusement and play and distraction and diversions? And then Allah subhanahu answers that for us in Surah Al-Dhariyat, where Allah subhanahu says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created. Here Allah's answering the purpose of our creation. I have not created the jinn or mankind except for the sole purpose that they should worship me. And worship just doesn't mean making 5 salawat or giving charity. Worship is every action we do, every statement that we say, as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimullah said, that al-ibadah ismun jami' لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من الأقوال والأعمال الظاهرة والباطنة. That worship is every single action and statement that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu. That's considered worship. Any word that you say, if it's pleasing to Allah, at that moment you're worshiping Allah subhanahu. Any action that you do, if it is pleasing to Allah subhanahu, at that moment you're worshiping Allah. So Allah subhanahu is telling us here that this worship gives us structure, whereas the amusement and play lacks purpose and structure. This purpose here gives us a why to our life. Why are we here on the face of this earth? What are we doing? And so the first order of business is to convert, is to change the amusement and play in our lives into structure by making every action and statement an act of worship. Change is not possible without the tools of change. And so in this surah, Allah subhanahu Jalla wa ala didn't just tell us to change and focus on our creation and the purpose of our creation. He also gave us the tools for changing. The very first word revealed was iqra, which is to read, to recite. The very first command is not to worship Allah. It's not to give charity. It's not to speak the truth. It is iqra, to read, to seek knowledge. This is the first command, the first word, because knowledge is the catalyst for change. It is through learning, it is through knowledge how we change ourselves and we better ourselves. And so it is not an accident that the very next surah that was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam after Surah Al-Alaq was Surah Al-Qalam, the pen. Because once we're learning knowledge, there has to be the documentation of this knowledge. So Allah subhanahu swore by the pen by saying, وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ. He swore by the pen to show the importance of this pen. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, قَيِّدُ الْعِلْمَ بِالْكِتَابِ, to preserve knowledge through writing. So Allah subhanahu is directing us through these very first verses of the Quran to the tools of change, that if you want to change yourselves and change society, it starts by seeking knowledge and recording and memorizing and documenting this knowledge. And if we look to the early parts of our history in Islam, the early generations dedicated immense amounts of time for seeking knowledge. And that seeking knowledge has a direct proportionate relationship to changing society. And changing society has a direct proportionate relationship to bringing success and glory to society. And if you study throughout history, as long as Muslims were seeking the knowledge of Islam and the knowledge of this world, we find that they were in glory. And as soon as they started to decrease their knowledge, especially the knowledge of the deen of Allah subhanahu, we found that humiliation started to creep into the regions of where Muslims occupied. And to give one example of the amazing amount of dedication that existed in the time of the early generations, we have Imam Abu Yusuf, who was one of the top students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And Abu Yusuf, a scholar in his own right, was laying in his deathbed about to die. And one of the top faqihs, one of the top jurists of the time comes to visit him at his deathbed. And as soon as Imam Abu Yusuf sees this faqih come in, he remembers that he taught him a fiqh issue regarding inheritance. So Abu Yusuf says to him, "Can you remind me about the fiqh issue of inheritance regarding grandmothers when it comes to a certain situation?" The faqih was astonished. He said to him that you're about to die any moment, and you're concerned about this fiqh issue of grandmothers inheriting in a certain condition? Imam Abu Yusuf responds, and he says that I died knowing this mas'ala. I die knowing this fiqh matter is better than I die being ignorant of it. This was their dedication to knowledge. As Imam Ahmed said, seeking knowledge, to seek knowledge, min al-mahdi ila al-lahdi, to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, because knowledge is the catalyst for change, and change is the ingredient for success and glory. And there's a difference between those who want change and those who want to change. Everybody wants change. Everybody wants to be better. But how many want to be better? How many want to change? And that the difference is that wanting to change requires effort, requires seeking knowledge, requires doing great deeds that lead to that change. And so the health of a community is measured by how many people are seeking knowledge, how many people attend the halaqat, how many people attend the durus, how many people attend the circles of knowledge, how many people attend the seminars, how many people attend the gatherings of knowledge. That is a metric to measure the health of a community. If a community is not seeking knowledge, then the community is sick. It needs healing. If the community is active in seeking knowledge, then we will find that the change will increase and the community will better itself. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين فإنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. In this beautiful surah, Surah Al-Alaq, Allah gives us the catalyst for change, to seek knowledge, tells us where to start to understand our purpose in this life, and to change the default setting of where we live. And then Allah subhanahu later in the surah mentions a mindset that is resistant to change. A lot of times, some of us don't change because we have the wrong mindset. Our mindset is set to be resistant to be better. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about one person. He says, كَلَّا إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطَغَى أَرَّآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. He says, surely, truly, man has exceeded all bounds. He sees himself as self-sufficient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl, who has wealth, who has luxury, who has status, who has leadership, who has what he can ask for. When Islam came to him, which requires him to change the default setting of this environment, he said, why do I need it? I have status, I have wealth, I have leadership, I have luxury in my life. Why do I need it? أَرَّآهُ اسْتَغْنَى. Does he see himself as self-sufficient? So the deception of this life is, if Allah blesses us with wealth, with health, that we think we are good. A lot of times when nasiha or advice is given, some people say, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. Everything is going well in my life, so that probably means Allah is pleased with me. If that's the case, then we should say Allah would have been pleased with Al-Walid ibn Mughira, with Abu Jahl, with Abu Lahab, with Fir'aun, who had wealth, who had rulership, who had leadership. So those are not the metrics to see if Allah is pleased with us or not, because Allah gives the dunya to those whom He loves, and He gives the dunya to those who He does not love. And so, the metric here is to see if the person is complying with what we defined as to be worship. And so the deception here is that what I have of this world, I'm good, I don't need to change. And this is why Allah subhanahu in that verse continued by saying, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَهُ, that the life of this world is nothing but play and amusement, and just in case you get deceived by it, Allah subhanahu continues, وَلَلدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ, but the home of the hereafter is better. That no matter how much wealth we get, how much comfort we get, how much luxury we get, it's a deception. The people of the hellfire, whom Allah subhanahu describes as وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا, that the life of the world deceived them, they are the ones who will be asking the people of paradise for provisions, for water. So let not the life of this world, its comfort and luxury, think that we're good, we don't need change. And so Allah subhanahu then mentioned, وَلَلدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ, points our attention to the hereafter, that if we think this luxury and this comfort is good, then what are we compromising? What are we putting on the line for the luxury of this world and the comfort of this world? We are putting a greater luxury, a greater comfort on the line by not changing and complying with the commands of Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala. Another mindset resistant to change, some people say, well, are you saying I'm not good enough? Am I not good enough? Another mindset is where a person says, well, you should accept me for who I am. Right? We hear that a lot. Accept me for who I am. If someone loves you, they would not accept you for who you are. If someone loves you, they would want you to be better and support your growth. If someone doesn't truly love you, they would accept you for where you are, and you would stay on that level forever. Because the canonical law is that no one can be like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his worship, in his character, in his goodness. And if that is the case, then there's a huge amount of space for improvement between us and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Which means that if we are improving ourselves our whole lives until death, we will never reach the level of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we should not have this resistant mindset of saying, accept me for who I am. Accept me where I am. Am I not good enough for you? Yes, you're good enough at the moment, but Islam throughout its teachings tells us to improve and to be better. And your loved ones will want you to be better and improve if they truly love you. And this is why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ad-deenun nasiha. The whole deen is nasiha. The whole deen is giving advice. Yes, Hajj is also part of the deen. Salah is also part of the deen. Charity is also part of the deen. But the Prophet ﷺ is emphasizing by saying, ad-deenun nasiha, meaning the whole deen is giving advice, because giving advice and helping others to improve and be better occupies a very high position in Islam. As Allah subhanahu jalla wa ala also said in other places, فَذَكِّرْ فَإِنْ نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى سَيَذَّكَّرُ مَنْ يَخْشَى, where Allah subhanahu tells us to remind ourselves and remind others, because we should have this culture of growth, this culture of change. And Allah subhanahu in Surah Al-Alaq began with alaq. It's also called Al-Alaq, which is the clinging clot, the origin of the creation of man. And we know that alaq then changes into a mudgha, which is a lump of flesh. And the mudgha changes into an idham, which is bones. And the bones is then clothed with more flesh until it's a fetus, until it's born and becomes an infant, until it becomes a toddler and a child, and then the adolescent stage, and so on and so forth. And the message in Surah Al-Alaq, Allah is reminding us of alaq, is that you from inception have been changing. Why stop changing at any given time? Why stop seeking knowledge after graduation? Why stop changing since you have gotten a job and have a family? Change never stops, because since inception, our history has been about change. And Allah subhanahu revealed this surah, Surah Al-Alaq, in the month of Ramadan. It was revealed to the heart of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Hira in the month of Ramadan, signifying that one of the greatest times for change is in the month of Ramadan. And as we are approximately just 10 days away from the month of Ramadan, this is an amazing time for us to dedicate our lives, dedicate our days of this month of Ramadan to change. We all know where we have to improve. We all know what things we have to change in. We all know what things should be top on our list. And may Allah subhanahu enable us to be not just those who want change, but those who want to change. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم جعلنا من عبادك المخلصين. اللهم جعلنا من عبادك المتقين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى.